What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to a brand new episode of Maximus the Fourth. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive and look at Crystal Pepsi. Today, I will be undergoing a taste test of Crystal Pepsi. Before I undergo the taste test, I'm going to fill you guys in on the complete history of Crystal Pepsi and all the runs that it has made in the last 3 decades. This is a 2018 bottle from the 2018 run. Let's get into this. Before I undergo this review, I have to give a huge shout out and massive thanks to a YouTuber that goes by the name of DJ Glowing Ice. His YouTube name is Industrial Industries World Radio. He has this crazy video where he literally collect every single container of Crystal Pepsi that had ever been made, and it's absolutely nuts. He showcases every single can, bottle, glass bottle, you name it, and the knowledge that I gained from that video is very valuable. So thank you, DJ Glowing Ice, for doing all the digging. I didn't even have to do any research. All I had to do was watch your video. So here we go. Let's get into this. Crystal Pepsi was first released in 1992 and then discontinued in 1994. Shortly after, it had also been released in Canada in 1993 and then discontinued in 1994. And this is an original bottle of Crystal Pepsi from 1992 or 3. And I do believe that Crystal Pepsi was originally released from Pepsi to compete with Coca-Cola's side product of Vanilla Coke. Needless to say, Crystal Pepsi did fail pretty badly, and it lasted only for 1.5 to 2 years on the first run. So what Pepsi did is they came out with a brand new formula of clear cola, and this one came out in 1994, and this one was called Crystal from the makers of Pepsi, and everyone called it Crystal from Pepsi for short. Now make no mistake, this absolutely is not Crystal Pepsi. It had a completely different formula. It tasted different. And the distinctive difference with this one is it had a new citrus taste. Crystal from Pepsi failed even worse than the original Crystal Pepsi, and it was discontinued even before a year had passed by. Sorry guys, this is what the original diet bottle of Crystal Pepsi looked like as well. So Crystal from Pepsi failed even worse. But then there was also a release of original Crystal Pepsi in Spain. But this run was very, very short-lived, and it was very quickly discontinued. And it was discontinued in that very same year that it was first released in Spain. Crystal Pepsi was also released in Germany in 1994, and this was actually the longest lifespan that any of us had ever seen Crystal Pepsi up to this very point, and then it was discontinued in 1996. And then, 9 years later, suddenly out of nowhere, there was this soda that was released in Mexico called Pepsi Clear. And Pepsi Clear was indeed the same exact ingredients as the original Crystal Pepsi, but it just went under a different packaging and name. And Pepsi Clear was actually only ever available in 2005 for the holiday seasons, and it never ever came back. It was discontinued just that fast after the holiday seasons. And because of this, because there was never a re-release after 2005, and it was only ever available for the holiday seasons in 2005, Pepsi Clear is actually the more rare variation of any Crystal Pepsi bottle to this very day. Very, very hard to find. It actually took my buddy, the great DJ Glowing Ice, 5 or 6 years to find one bottle of Pepsi Clear, and he is a very diligent collector, so that's really saying something. And then, 10 years later, after Pepsi Clear was discontinued in Mexico, suddenly out of nowhere, from the great and awesome help from the YouTube star that we all know, love, and adore today as the LA Beast, Kevin Straley, had started this Bring Back Crystal Pepsi campaign, in which it was actually a successful one. And because of him, Crystal Pepsi actually did come back in 2015, but it was only available for purchase on a website called Pepsi Pass, and the supplies were limited. They only made 16,000 different six-packs for fans to purchase. And this was also a Pepsi sweepstakes item, so you couldn't just go on the website and just automatically buy it or anything like that. You had to follow PepsiCo's instructions on their website and do what you were required to do in order to earn points to make a purchase on one of these 16,000 six-packs of the Crystal Pepsi sweepstakes item. Once you did what you had to do and you earned enough points, I don't know, was it 100 points? I don't know, but you had to have enough points to be required to make a purchase. You were then eligible to spend your points and redeem them for one of these six-packs of the limited supply of Crystal Pepsi. And let me tell you, this left a lot of fans very, very upset, because a lot of them were right behind the LA Beasts movement, and a lot of them wanted a chance to try Crystal Pepsi, but a lot of them did not. And then, in 2016, it was official. Crystal Pepsi was finally back and available nationwide on store shelves. And that same year, just 1 month later, Crystal Pepsi was also released in Canada. But shortly after just a couple months of both of the runs in the States and Canada, they were both discontinued. And then, later on, in 2016, Crystal Pepsi was available again, but only on Amazon.com, of Amazon's Prime of Pantry service. And then, in 2017, Crystal Pepsi was released again in both the States and Canada, but shortly after discontinued just a few months later, from the summer to the fall season. And by this point, Crystal Pepsi was now very high in demand. And then Crystal Pepsi came out once again in the United States in 2018, and by this point everybody was expecting Crystal Pepsi to come back every year for a limited time only. Sadly, this run, Canada did miss out. But then, in 2019, Crystal Pepsi was released once again in Canada, and this time it was Canada's time, and the US missed out. In 2020 and both 2021, there were no more releases of Crystal Pepsi. But however, the only trace of any Crystal Pepsi was there was this crazy contest that was going on where you could actually enter into a chance to win this 16 karat, I don't know exactly what it was, diamond engagement ring. And it was actually made out of Crystal Pepsi. So if you licked the ring, you could literally taste Crystal Pepsi because it was made out of that. But there was only one ring available, and you had to be an incredibly lucky winner in order to be the winner. And this contest did take place in 2020. And then in 2021, there were rumors that Crystal Pepsi would be released once again in 2022 for its 30th anniversary, but this time with a brand new flavor of Crystal Pepsi Zero. And according to what I saw on the possibility of that release happening on DJ Glowing Ice's video on the website that he pulled up very diligently, the Crystal Pepsi Zero bottle actually had a black looking label and it was legit going to be zero sugar. However, very sadly, that release never did take place. But however, on January 4th of 2022, there were 300 selected winners that won a six-pack of Crystal Pepsi, and these were actually the 30-year anniversary edition bottles, and the labels were actually very clear, a lot much like the old school Crystal Pepsi. They had completely done away with the white label, so you could see through even the label. This was a Pepsi sweepstakes item, and it was very rare. Like I said, there were only 300 winners, and there were six packs. And then the final release of Crystal Pepsi up to date in 2022 was released in Canada only, and the States were supposed to have it too, but very sadly it was canceled. And these bottles that were released for the final time in Canada were a little bit different. On the top it said Crystal and then Pepsi like normal, but then on the bottom it had another word that was called Crystal, but it was spelled Cristal. How weird is that? Kind of cool, if you ask me. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the entire history and all the runs of Crystal Pepsi. But what about that rumor about Crystal Pepsi coming out with a new zero Crystal Pepsi Zero variation? Will that ever even happen? I don't know. But I sure would like to see that. Okay, guys, now that I have filled you in on the complete history of Crystal Pepsi, it is go time, baby. I'm going to open up this bottle, give you guys a taste test, let you know exactly what I think, and then this will be the end of the video. Let's go, baby. Haha, the good old Crystal Pepsi. Mmm, so good. This bottle is 5 years old, so it has absolutely no fizz left, but the taste is definitely not tainted at all. It's still there. It is still very good. I don't know, for those of you out there who have not had Crystal Pepsi, but just imagine a lighter taste than Pepsi Original. Mmm, so good. It still tastes just the same way that I remember it. Just so you guys know, the true difference of Crystal Pepsi modern day was that there's actually caffeine in the modern day Crystal Pepsi. The classic days of Crystal Pepsi was caffeine free. So make that known. But how much does Crystal Pepsi taste like Pepsi Original exactly? Well, there's only one way to find out. Just for the fun of it, let's take a sip of normal Pepsi. See what we can find out here. Okay, yes. So original Pepsi, it just has a much heavier flavor and more of a punch to it, like pow. Whereas Crystal Pepsi has a lot more of a settle kind flavor, like yeah. You know what I mean? I'm not sure how else to describe that, but do I like Crystal Pepsi better than original Pepsi? I would probably say I do. It sure tastes wonderful. And yeah, You can't go wrong with Crystal Pepsi. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would I score Crystal Pepsi? I'm not so sure. Let's just play around with this a little bit more, and then I'll let you guys know. Crystal Pepsi's really good, no doubt about it. There's other sodas out there that I like much better, like Pepsi Vanilla or Pepsi Wild Cherry, I think. But do not underestimate the great Crystal Pepsi. It's got great flavor. If I had to give you guys my best score right here, right now, I think I would give Crystal Pepsi a very solid 7 out of 10. And if I'm being very generous, maybe a 7.5. So for those of you that have never tried Crystal Pepsi, pay attention to the runs that it makes, or go on eBay and buy some. It's worth it. So, all right, guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. You have received the entire history of Crystal Pepsi and my personal taste test, review, and rating. Crystal Pepsi gets a very solid score, final of 7.5 out of 10. Again, thank you, DJ Glowing Ice, for all that information off of your 30 years of Crystal Pepsi video. To all my beloved fans, I thank you guys for watching, and I am Maximus the Fourth, and I am now signing out, and I will see you next time.